All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. If you haven't been here before, been here in a long time. Basically, we got two presentations tonight. Apparently, it's like summer and everybody's hanging out outside doing fun things, not getting meeting presentations ready. But yeah, Patrick, if you want to take it away, go for it.
Cool. All right. Hey everybody. So I'm going to bore you to death with a short PowerPoint. This was spawned from, there was a bunch of questions on a remodel. And so I figured I stupidly took on the job of doing a remodel on my house and learned a few things on the way. So I thought I would just share that with you. So how it looks like it's going. Thumbs up for the screen share?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you can, you're running presenter mode or whatever. Oh, yep.
All right, we'll try one more. There we go. All right, that one. All right, there should be presenter mode. All right.
Yep, looks good.
All right, so to give you a scale of what the project was, it was down to the studs remodel where I was trying to do a lot / most of it myself with the help of a few friends enlisted, and figured out a lot of stuff along the way, such as what help to get, what help I should have gotten, and how I'm still married and with my partner through this whole thing. Mo's still there, and how I managed to rope my family into helping and some of the unexpected things along the way. So with that, this is what I'd hoped it will turn out to be when it's all done. So we lifted one side of the roof. We completely tore off the back sunroom and resloped that roof, changing it from 7.5 foot high ceiling to, it's on one side it's 7.5 foot high, but on the other side it's 10 feet, which has been a nice addition. We changed stair locations. We added some structural beams in the middle of it. We had a lot of unexpected surprises and a lot of stuff that worked out pretty nicely. So that's where things were from going. So how much construction work had I done ahead of time? I would consider myself luckily handy, but I started, the first thing I ever built at scale was this thing. So it was a shed that was done on 2x6 construction, and just a really simple sloped shed roof. And that was the first time I'd ever done framing. Paid someone to do the slab floor, but then we did everything else after that. And this was my trial run. So you'll notice the same blue, same type of windows, same type of doors. Just my trial run of like, all right, can I do this and how silly will I be to tear apart my house? So as a brief list of changes, so reside it, tear off the dormers, basically made sure that the roof could support solar panels in the future, go with a metal roof, all the windows and doors were done, basement window wells were taken out, open up the kitchen layout a little bit. We changed the stairs to go from the kitchen to now go from a totally different part of the house, and we put in a switchback stairs, which has been awesome. I still have a lot of work to do. I'll be in the wood shop building cabinets, replacing, I still have to do the metal roof. So if anyone knows a good metal roofer, please let me know. I'd be happy to take that recommendation. And then there is just a litany of other stuff that I didn't think I was going to have to do, but I still have to do, such as more drywall and patching and a cable or an outlet that I needed to put in a different place. So the list is never going, but the end is somewhat in sight. So unknown changes. Probably one of the weirdest things was when we had to find out that we had a room that was supposed to be the same size. We started to cut into it, and then we found out that someone had patched it together over probably 3 different remodels. So while we had a pretty good plan, there was definitely, that was a weird, unexpected thing. The other one was we had to redo the sewer lateral. We ended up doing that with a lining. So I can talk to someone on that. If anyone's thinking about doing a lining, I will tell you that for the most part, it was really good. The downside is you have to do a clean out, or you have to do more maintenance on it because we've had to flush it out to make sure nothing gets blocked when it goes from a 4 inch from inside the house. And that lining takes it down to about 3.5. And then the last part was we had to spray foam the attic. So that was an unexpected expense, and that was just down to some spacing. So the first piece of advice that I would give anybody is to do as-built. And this was something that we got done probably 5 years before we started any work on the house at all. I actually paid an architect to actually do exact layout of the house to scale with measurements. And I have probably used these, I don't know, probably the most thing I've used most on the remodel is just going back over these. I have so many copies of these printed out to scale. It was really, really helpful for making sure. Probably the biggest thing is that walls that you thought lined up didn't line up properly. And then we saw some weird dimensions on exterior walls where again, things you'd think were, oh, that's easily just a 2x4 wall. Well, no, it was actually a 2x5.25 wall where they had kind of scabbed on some different types of wood to make windows fit. So really weird stuff that really showed up on the scale drawings. Was there a question or anything like that, or just a cough?
You're good.
All right, just a cough.
Too good at mics.
What?
I said too good at microphones.
Yeah, all right. So that was the as-built. I'd say I saw a bunch of people asking about like what, where to start. And for me, this was probably on our third remodel. This is the thing I learned from the first two that I would just tell everybody to go and do and make sure they get as-built. It really helps with doing those 3D renderings and in SketchUp. That was another thing that I used all these drawings to give me the measurements for SketchUp to make sure that was accurate. All right. So I think, for those sectorites, I had a moment in this middle of this project where I was wondering, do I just yell, put on a pink cowboy hat and just yell yeehaw and keep going? Or do I ask for help? And that was around a calculated footing. So I had a lot of the math done, reached out to the group, and the footing I was going to put in was really, really close to what the structural engineer came back with. But having that stamp or that seal of approval made me feel much better about what I ended up putting in. The other thing that I was lucky enough to get was a retired builder who gave me a couple of bits of advice on some of the structural work, where to put support walls, and probably one of the most surprising things was I actually got the whole house tested for lead, which if you live in an older home was really helpful because what I found out is we actually didn't have that. We had lead paint on the wood, and that was it. We only didn't have lead paint anywhere else. So that made it a lot easier to do the demo and feel safe about that. And then drywall was just something, hire it out. I just say that to anybody if you can, especially if you're doing a huge one. And then the last one is I was lucky to catch on to a group of 3 laborers who would come and do huge chunks of work. And they were just, that was so much faster definitely for certain things.
I guess I had a couple of problems on that concert.
So, all right. So, if you want to get your family involved, get them cool safety gear. I would say we used respirators for absolutely everything and eye protection. And then the cool Tyvek suits were really sweaty in the summer, but really kept the itch off from all the dust and kind of just weird fibers that were in some of the older stuff. So that was something that was really helpful. The last thing and things I didn't do on my other remodels is I took a ton of photos. Specifically, I took photos with a measuring tape attached to it, and I've gone back to these over and over again. Testers are great for checking in walls, but there's nothing better than having something like this to go back to over and over again, just to make sure you know how things were framed and where you ran cables, and if you've done something weird, now you've got a photo record of it. And again, I've gone back to these over and over and over again. So I will say that for those of you who haven't started one of these, there is a point in every project where you're like, what have I done? And for me, this day was the day where I'm like, oh crap. So we torn off the roof was gone. We torn off all the dormers, and we were about to get a really bad windstorm. And that was in so kind of like the end of 2021 was when this was taken. And it was just that night where I'm like, oh God, all right, I can't go back and I just have to plow forward. But I was still nervous as all get out when we did this, when we took out the dormers. All right. So the other part was how we stayed somewhat sane with the family. So I have two kids who are now 12. They were 11 when we were doing this work. But we got them to do, so they did all of some pretty manageable jobs that they could finish. And they actually got a big kick out of this. I got this, so one of the tools that I got that I've loved has been this little palm nailer, which was great for them. They were able to put in a nail, just use it, and it felt pretty safe. They were really good about, always wearing eye protection, keeping their hands away, and they ended up hanging all of the joist hangers throughout the house. So they did a really, really good job with that, and just they got them kind of in that sense of accomplishment and wanting to do it. We always did a lot of safety talk. Always made sure that they had gear and that they had hearing protection, and they've done a ton of work since to keep doing this project. You'll notice that my other half is not in the photos. That was something that worked to keep us together still. So she was doing other things like dinner and keeping the family going. But I learned that the hard way. That was a good thing to not have Trish part of that. So that worked out well. I will say that if you're doing anything structural, the first time you do it, it was really, really scary. So making that cut into a support beam. Again, I'd done some work on that shed, and that retired builder really helped me out. So they gave me, solid advice. Overbuild. It's okay to overbuild those support walls. You can see here we had a bit of a mess of structure. We had, I was going to go here with the laser pointer. So you can see here we had this weird structure where the house went in 3 different ways. So this middle section is supported by 2x10s. And when I told him what I thought it was, he said, "You're wrong. There's no way it can be that." And then when we took everything off, he's like, "Oh, you're right." But that meant that we had to put in these like weight support columns. Then I probably overbuilt these support walls, but you know what? I reused all the 2x4s on all the other support walls. And what I found was, and this was a tip that I learned, was when everything is jacked and supported well, when you're doing that cut on the column, the blade went through like butter, like there was nothing holding it up. And there was a couple of times that I will say, like these jack columns, I found out I gave them an extra twist. If I found a blade was cutting, a Sawzall blade was cutting or getting jammed, just an extra twist on that to make sure I lifted the tension off the post. That was a really good indicator for me. I'm sure there's a lot smarter ways of doing it, but for me, that was the telltale sign that maybe I needed an 1/8 of an inch more or a 1/16 of an inch more in those support columns, that it just wasn't quite snug enough. Yeah. Let me see. So then, plywood will make you feel a lot better. So this was that same job, afterwards we put some plywood on. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, life is good. And it worked out well. The other thing you'll notice is we actually overbuilt or we put the window jambs outside. So we actually put a whole bunch of insulation around the house as well. And we're able to make sure that the window frames are going to support it. So that took a little bit of time to calculate all that ahead of time, but definitely was well worth it. So when we went to insulate around the house, now the house is flat and you'd never know that we have an extra 2 inches of insulation on the outside. All right. I would say I feel like, I'm a relatively competent plumber. I'm not great, but I definitely feel pretty good about doing it. But one of the things I learned on this was I'm pretty good at testing, but I don't know how many fern coats I'd put on and how many pieces of plumbing I'd put together. This is something I felt really good about. But I would say that what I found here was I had a hard time getting that sewer lateral, the new sewer lining, to actually seal properly around this fern coat. So that was definitely one. I had to try 2 different testing plugs. You'll see the wax ring around to make sure that I got a good seal around the inflatable tester. And I just, even if you've done it, this is going to be buried in concrete, and so I just didn't want to go back and have to rip any of that out. So the first 2 times I did it, that fern coat wasn't seated right, and then the other time I learned that the actual inflatable stopper wasn't seated right. So that's where the wax ring from the toilet came on. A shout out to the plumbing store on Willie Street. Regan was awesome, gave me that tip to use the wax seal. And that saved my bacon just to make sure everything was good. All right. So here's where things are at today. You kind of notice that those windows are sitting proud. As I say, I still have a steel roof to do. A lot of the materials that I'll use, like this, you'll see this shark skin membrane. It was a little more expensive, and even the house wrap that I use is a little more expensive. But what it did was it gave me time to get the work done. So this roof membrane, it can be left exposed for over a year, and it's good. It's kind of like an ice and water shield plus. So I spent a little more to do that to give myself extra time, and the same is true for the house wrap. That could be left exposed without any issue. And again, it was just when you're working by yourself, I think that's one of the things that you need. You need more time to work on. And then last but not least, there was definitely a couple of memorable moments. So those two contractors who were helping me build all the other parts of the tool. There was one night where they said, "Hey, Dad, can we jump out the window?" And I thought that was pretty cool. First, I was about to say no, and then I was like, "Yeah, whatever. There's nothing else to lose." So, first floor window, mind you, but they did jump. They spent a half an hour jumping out. And then I think, the other part is probably my funnest moment from this whole model was this night. We were working on just actually upstairs. You saw it earlier where they were putting in supports in the raft. They were putting in joists in the ceiling, and they came along, and I just caught them just doing this. And if we hadn't have been working on this, they hadn't have been, felt safe working around, I never would have got this moment. And it was just kind of this awesome moment of just complete fun where they were just goofing off. And someone asked me, like, why did I do the remodel? Did you save yourself money? And the answer is probably no. Definitely didn't save myself time. A lot of headaches, but there were a fair few of these moments, which I know I'll remember, and that's probably the reason why I look back and say it is a pretty good success. And with that, I'll say, any questions or any specific part of the project that you'd like me to elaborate on?
I have a bunch of questions. Yes, I just speak, but if you speak up, you can hear you. I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how much did you pay for your as-built drawings or like ballpark numbers?
As built, I think I spent $500.
Oh, wow. Okay. I really enjoyed your pictures with your dimensions. I did a lot of that when I've done remodel work. My brother actually came over with a 360 camera one time, and so I could sit in my bathroom and like pan around in a 360. And granted, I'll need it in 10 years or whatever, but when I was like hanging tile and I needed, a 2x to stick something to, it was really helpful. But that was a pretty good tip. And I have one more question that I forgot.
I got a fun thing I've learned from being around here. So the one that Sean taught me was if you take the tie back house wrap works just fine backwards. So Sean installed his tie back reversed on his shed, and so it just looks white. If it says tie back, everybody knows you're like building the building and you're slacking off and you're not done. But if it's just white house wrap, it looks white and it totally looks like white siding. It does not.
More importantly, white doesn't fade. It's always white. Okay. They can fade. People start to realize you can work it.
Yep.
And then the other one is, I believe Mr. Mark is at 1 tarp per year for the roof. So you just layer the tarps is the real trick. You don't need that fancy shark skin, roofing. You just 1 tarp per year. And you don't have to peel them off. You just stack them.
Just stack them.
The next one.
Extra security, so it's not like shingles where you 3 layers and you're done.
Yeah, no, this is how many tarps you got up, Mark?
I just figure that raccoons will add for ventilation, so I really want that wood to decay a little bit. You keep nothing inside, you don't care what happens.
Yeah.
I remember my last question. You said seemingly contradictory statements that you hadn't done major remodel work before this project in your shed, and then you mentioned multiple remodel projects.
Yeah. So I've been in 3 houses. I should say, so the first house I completely paid someone to do it. And then I went, did I really need to pay him to do all of it? And then the next house, I didn't do any structural work, but I felt good about wiring and plumbing. And then this house, I said I did more framing and structure. I did framing and structural work, which I'd never really touched before I did the shed. And the structural work I'm talking about now is like putting in LVLs, so like building support walls, taking out supporting posts and putting in metal posts and actually lagging on LVLs to other ones. So that was probably my biggest stretch goal. And then framing out the windows and things like that. I just had never done anything like that.
Awesome. Sounds fun. And I'm happy you're still married.
Yeah. So am I.
Were you living in the house?
No, we moved out for 7 months. And so we toyed around with the idea of, doing room by room. And then I made the decision just to leave, to get out. And I will say that, again, that was another great decision. It was nice at the end of a day to just leave and go to a clean area to do it. That was, for personal sanity. On the other side, it was amazing because we had the whole house open, we redid all the ductwork for the HVAC. And and this is a 40s home. And what we found is now we actually have cooling in particular works, is the only thing I'll say. So these last couple of days, it's been great, right? The whole house is at a constant temperature. Again, a little luxury that would have been really, really tricky if we had to try and do it room by room.
I guess was in the city of Madison. What was your experience trying to navigate all the city stuff?
So I live in the village of Maple Bluff.
There it is.
The value end. So there's 2 things. So I've done City of Madison permits and inspectors on electrical and plumbing when I lived in the City of Madison. And, what I learned there is I didn't argue, even if I felt like I had a good engineering leg to stand on. I just like, all right, if that's what you want, done, right? And that was good. I will say the building inspector that we've got now it's more of a collaboration. So I'd give you know, a really big shout out to Callie. Like it feels like whenever he's coming in, he's seen a lot, and he actually imparts wisdom, right? He's like, oh, you know, you probably overbuilt this. It's fine, but just so as you know, the next time this is good. Or, you know, even when I was doing when we were looking at some of the structural work, he even gave me some ideas about how he's like, you got to check this out. But you know, just off the cuff, here's stuff I've seen in other buildings. So I'd say absolutely night and day difference to City of Madison and the value end of Maple Bluff building inspector.
Yeah, that was what I expected. I was just curious. I didn't know you were Maple Bluff, but that was, the city's trying, just very poorly. They're very bad at it. I'm sure in 30 years they'll have it all straightened out. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, your value end of Maple Bluff, it's curious to me. On your budget, you don't have to tell us all the numbers, but how did you write a budget? How far off a budget were you percentage wise? Have you calculated that? Does this make you want to cry?
You know, so we bought the house in I think it was 09, right? So right at the bottom. So we used to live over in Willie Street, kind of a block off the river there. And so we sold at the worst time, and took it in the shorts there, but we also bought it here. And nice part is the values in you know, a neighborhood has gone up far, you know, just unsustainably in my opinion, but I'm not gonna you know, I think we're still under value, so I haven't outstripped that, which is thankful. On the budget side, I'm probably so I did do a budget, and then I did another budget, and then I did a third budget. And on the third budget, I'm feeling like, so we're probably about 10% over. And it's kind of one of it's for me, it was one of those things like the sewer lateral was one of those, you know, because I dug up most of the cast iron in the basement and it just crumbled. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm this far in for the extra, that was 15 grand to do a sewer lateral reline. I was like, I might as well do it now and just get it finished. I had the whole floor opened up. You know, they were able to put it in. I saved some money because they didn't have to dig up any floor. And now I don't have to worry about, well, is that lateral ever going to fail? Because if it's in any way like the cast iron that I took out of the basement, it's, you know, it's only a couple of years before it's going to start cracking, and that's going to happen.
So you hired a plumbing company to line it with fiberglass, and that's from your house to the city.
It's through the street, so about 80 foot of this, it's basically a resin that they pump, that they basically push through it, and they do it with air. It's pretty cool to see. The company was kind of from the Milwaukee area. There's only one place that I found to do it. I will say the price difference between that and digging was 3 grand, between having someone come out and with a backhoe and dig everything. And the reason, so I did 2 reasons I went with the sewer lateral, or the relining. One, the pipe itself, we got a camera on it and it was intact. And it was 3 grand cheaper. And 2, it was in the winter time. And so I didn't want to have to mess around with thawing the ground for the backhoe to come in, and it just would have been that would have been an even more nightmare situation. On the other side, one of the downsides to relining the pipe, as I mentioned, is we go from a 4-inch pipe, which is in the house, to probably about a 3.5 inch. So if you think about that lining, it just decreases the diameter. And I've had to jet out that a couple of times. Now that I know that, I just bought, you can buy this little end for a hose, and I can do it myself here, you know, once a year, and that will work out.
The city of Madison has been hiring that firm to redo some of their water lines. Also, they did it in our neighborhood up by Lakeview Park a couple of years ago. Same process, epoxy and air inflatable liner that gets shot down the line.
I think the other thing is because they might, I wonder what size those lines are too. So I know, you know, that like with 4-inch going in, that goes to 3.5. With 6 going down, it might be a little better. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. We didn't dig up the street. They were done in 2 days, you know, pretty awesome. So I'd recommend that. Just knowing that you might have to jet it out.
Patrick, what did you use for insulation of your walls?
Outside I used rock wool, inside I used unfaced fiberglass.
Okay.
And then on the inside I used vapor membrane. It's Certainty makes it. It's actually called membrane, and it was a one-way vapor barrier. What was
Yes, so the membrane is actually, it's not a one way, it's a very permeable variability. So in the winter when it's been dry, it blocks, you know, air. In the summer when you have moisture, it open. The actual plastic itself kind of stretches in there. I don't know exactly how it works, but it becomes more permeable up trees. Got it. So how did you learn about certainty and problem? Those aren't your standard water choices.
So how did I learn about all the products and why did I pick the kind of things that I did?
Yeah.
YouTube mess, I would say, YouTube rabbit hole. So there's a guy, so you've probably seen Matt Reisinger. He you know, he had some stuff that he was going with, I'll say, German and Swiss expensive companies. There was some stuff that I saw on that, like we did a peel and stick house wrap that he was using. I think Siga was a company from Germany or Austria, and so I wanted to use as many American made products as I could. So I went. There was a company in Philadelphia called Benjamin Obdike. Weird name, but amazing customer support. So we use their peel and stick membrane. And that was just, we used their liquid flashing too, which was really cool. And it was just, you know, I was basically, I do IT by day, and I was just being a complete, you know, building nerd, trying out all these different products because I could. So I'd say Obdike was great for that. And their customer, like by customer service, I mean, they were like, I had installation questions. They jumped on the phone with me. They did a Zoom a bit in their mock-up studio. That was really, really good. The rock wool we sourced from is it John Mansville or I can't remember that. I can't even JM. So I use that over the Canadian brand rock wool. The membrane I think is Canadian made. I think that was kind of the more obscure stuff that I used in terms of kind of house wrap and then Shark Skin is a California company. But tarps are obviously for the next house remodel that I won't be allowed to.
There you go, camouflage.
There you go.
Don't even see the room.
Yeah, I did have one thing, Chris. You mentioned building inspectors. One thing I was not prepared for in the village of Maple Bluff was there are certain ordinances that I was not aware of around dumpster placement and how long they could be on your property. So let's just say I got a friendly visit from the village administrator reminding me of some of those ordinances.
I wanna go on record, I've done a bunch of remodel on my house in Madison, and the inspectors that I've dealt with were much like the inspector story you told of Maple Club. Like I did a whole house electrical, and the guy offered to come ahead of time, just to see, just to get, like, head things off the, so he came weeks ahead of time. And just did a walk around and said, okay, that's gonna fail, this you should look at, and then I didn't have to get the red card, he caught me while I was, throwing wire on the wall. And the same deal with, like, plumbing and some other stuff that I did. I don't know what these guys are about.
I think it very much depends on the day, it depends on what you're doing, it depends on who you get. The
Yeah.
thing that I thought for sure they were gonna be all over us on was all the structural work. Cause we welded all the beams here, we erected all the steel, we set all the stuff. Nobody ever looked at anything. They never asked for a welding certification, never looked at anything at all, like none of that happened.
Maybe that's because that's something that they normally, that's just like,
My experience has been most of the.
I will say the other part is they ask me weird questions. I will so on the electrical one, the building inspector asked me what I torqued the lug nuts to on my panel. And when I gave him the number, he was like, "Oh, okay, well." So yeah, so that was that was a couple of years ago, and I've had nothing but good things to say about him.
Yeah, they came back, the electrical guys came back here because the guy retired who was doing all the electrical inspections, and he never signed off on the service permit. So I got two brand new guys who showed up randomly. They call ahead and like, oh hey, maybe you'll be around. The guys show up and they're like, we want to look at the service. I'm like, well that's great, but I'm not turning the service off, so we're not opening the panels. You guys can look all your money. I can look inside unless you like want to schedule a day. So they wandered around and like looked at the outside of the panel. We're like, okay, we're good. Occupancy for months. Everything's on and running, all the lights are on, Yeah, clearly the old guy didn't check one box before he retired, and that was what sent you guys here.
My buddy had that happen in Shorewood, which I might be its own, I don't know what the rules of municipality is over there. But he bought a house, lived in it for a couple of years, randomly an inspector knocked on the door and was like, hey, I gotta check your windows. And he's like, what are you talking about? And the previous owner, years before they sold it, had done a full remodel on the kitchen and like moved some walls and did some window work and whatever. And the guy flagged him because the window that was next to the back door on either, there's two doors or whatever, but they're so high or whatever, they weren't tempered. And they're like, oh, you gotta fix this. And he's like, that remodel was like 8 years ago. And they're like, what? It came up and we never got a thing. And so I only know about this because he was stressing me out about it. He found some sticker that he bought that gives you tempered glass that, that was whatever, yeah. But it was just so, it was like years had gone by. And the house had sold. And...
All right, any other questions for Patrick? Thanks for providing entertainment. Sorry, I forgot about you.
No worries. No worries.
I have a feeling this will be the first of a string of house renovation presentations. I'm looking at Adam in the back of the room. He's still got to get the floor in.
Yeah. And if there's anything, anyone wants any info on any other specific part, I'm happy to share my pain, blood, cuts, you name it.
Awesome, thank you. So Sean is here in person, but I've got some photos from him. I have no idea what order he wants them in though, so maybe that might help. That might be a good place to start. All right, here I'll aim the mark mic that way. Oh, I can do the arrow question.
So, my wife and I got this chunk of black walnut for a wedding gift from a friend that has a big display we were trying to decide something to do with it, so a couple of years ago, we thought we'll make a coffee table. So, we actually started with, we started with, thinking we want to do something with CNC, like the big wood router. What a second. So we started mocking up different drawings, first hand drawing and throwing the CAD, throwing the router. I have a little spring loaded pencil I use to draw stuff full scale. And we ended up not liking it. And so we started working backwards and realized we weren't quite ready for CAD, so we go back to. We started thinking she wanted something lighter. So we bought a bunch of quarter wood dowels and started sticking them in a piece of cardboard and laid out roughly what patterns seemed to be aesthetically pleasing to hold this thing up. Knowing that we're going to ultimately transfer it to metal. And then she got this mocked up and then we're like, okay, what's next? We'll go back to CAD. Drew this in order to provide the whole placement. So I could then transfer that, basically redraw the spring loading to the hardware to give us a bending. Because this bottom piece of table is a 3/8 by 1 inch steel that we wanted to get those marks. And then also, so now that here's something that I can slowly bend the metal to fit the shape, but lay out exactly what she had mocked up in reality. So it's a very kind of convoluted way to build. It was actually, it was fun in the sense of not just, there's something that basically you couldn't draw this, I think, easy, efficiently in CAD. You can, I mean, I'm sure it probably could have done myself, but just the iterative process of taking the stick and holding the shot the shape that we wanted to walk by. And something that was right there in front of us that matched the piece of wood. So basically, once I had this, I had to figure out how to bend 3/8 by 1 inch steel. We tried it towards that kind of got us three. So I ended up making a cheater bar, basically about a square hole, a piece of 1/2 inch steel, and then use that to slowly work the arc around with that piece of ramwood there. And that was a CAD drawing that I knew matched the layout of the original. So basically, once we got that close, according to her, not exactly, so it's hard to do this whole stuff. Cut it, welded it, and then it sprung after I welded it, which was and that was all like, I don't know, a year and a half. My wife's an architect, she had to finish her tests, and so we put this on hold for the last 6 months. But just last night, she finished bending up the actual metal spindles there. So I just started tacking them in to the bottom. And basically, once I had the template laid out the top, I hadn't thought about, CNC routing the mold, but I don't know the holes and just real press. But I still have the problem. I wanted a clean look. I didn't want to wet tack weld all the time for it dry. So after I drilled into the top of that base, came into the side and hand drilled the 3/16 hole to attack the stimulant. So that's what I did there. And I thought I was presenting about 5 minutes. That's my needs. So each one of these is now locked in place, and I can easily grind the spacing. So ideally, this is in mind. So the next move is to attack all the tops, and I can grind on each one. So it's a very kind of backwards way to build, but with this organic shape and the different metal.
So that's not a medieval portrait.
No, it was when my daughter helped me put the card together. She was quite afraid that I said, just don't trip and fall.
It's getting close to a bed of nails. It might not even be
Well,
that dangerous.
come on, I saw it. Actually, experience you out there. So this is the slab, which this flattened it with the panel router that was cut down about 10 years ago and switched to it. But that panel router is great for making things parallel. So that's basically just rough, or rough sanded after the routed. But I had these two big checks. It's something I haven't done in a while, but it's kind of a fun trick. Is these checks were maybe an 1/8-inch tapered to a 32nd. So I ripped some wedges out of the same material, black walnut, and then this is just a block of the same way it fit. This is just the tech box for you with the honey dust, walnut, glue them in place, but they pretty much invisible. I haven't moved 6 months. So it's a fun trick to like basically rather than kind of just putty and fill, this is literally the same material. Quick trade. No, it sealed it up. Yeah, so I injected glue into the crack and then used that wedge. And the advantage of the wedge are these things. Number one, the crack is very thick, so you can seal the wedge. So it's thinner on one end, thicker on the other end. So once the glue set, cut rock sanded down.
But to his question though, will it stop the wood from checking form?
In theory, the glue should hold it stable. I mean, the stresses are in theory as long as it's. But I haven't sealed it yet. And I have waiting to finish this before I do the final sanding. So then, as soon as this is done, we're gonna use this product. Scope the rolling called black magic acid. So black is the steel. This is kind of make it subtle. And I think the cool part is, yeah.
Do you have to clear coat it?
If you just acid etch it, it'll still rust. So, I mean, I just put it back to the top of it, but then I'll just. It's similar. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the acid is, but it burns things. Yeah. I made the mistake of doing it in my basement. It's just like immediately. It's not like it's not acid burn here. I wouldn't recommend.
And I was gonna say it's definitely an outdoor.
Yeah.
spray.
It is. It's not like a or chemical impact that you can feel it burning.
Are you gonna use a spray varnish?
No, I got a product called Osmo. It's Swedish, but it's a polymerized oil that wipes on, with rag finish so you pop off it. It's not a heavily durable, but it's more of a matte, velvety feel. It gives it. It's not gonna. I didn't toxic for the long. Yeah, if I was using toxic. It'll look at it, yeah, but have look That's a wood craft. It's not like a Rubio makes again. It's probably that's what double. But it's supposedly it's not toxic to the side. That's not I'm not sure. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, the wood craft. Yeah, definitely a lot of knowledge there. And I've had a friend who's
So I just finally figured out the holes into the bottom rail are not all petty ones. Those holes go straight in and then she bent around after.
correct, yeah. So and I did so last 2 nights ago, took one of the quarter towels and drilled a 3/32 in each end of it. We have a piece of copper. Took that, so basically made a thing with it. So she could take each rod, 18 inches long, with a 3/4 inch valve on the end that flexible. So she could literally stick it through here and then get that 4.5-degree bend, pull it out, and then put that. I don't have a picture of the gate, but I made it like big bend. So which is basically a piece of half inch steel hole, put in our bend vise, and that second piece of quarter inch steel kind of pull in it. So when the rod went into it, the second piece came in and but she had to know when to stop it. And then we're trying to get, they're not extreme, but every one of these we try to get bang bang right in. So they look like it's great.
Yeah, it's a great job because I've been sitting here since I saw this earlier, trying to figure out how you got a bunch of cattywampus things. Like screw the template into the thing.
No, I mean, it was a little
That was where admittedly, that was where he started, was how I did all these holes and crazy angles.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if I got a picture of the gun moving. I part of it's the really nasty shit
gluing. Yeah,
Gluing.
yeah, it's just all gluing.
But yeah, I hadn't used that before. It's been a while. But
Yeah,
holy shit, yeah, it's really cool stuff. They put that on and it immediately face off.
So layout dye is like ink, super concentrated layout ink. So you ink up the whole surface of the metal.
Yeah,
and
so
you
I
can
can
scratch it or describe it very well. It keeps really vivid marks. It's very easy to track. You can scrub it as well, gluing on.
Right. So I glued the top of it, and then I took the scribe, set it at 3/16 half thickness, and then just ran that around scratching. So I had basically curved center line. But then when I put that on the drill press, spotted, I can at least eyeball the center line. So I knew because that's what I did to the a template wasn't perfect. I didn't bend it perfectly, so I had to. The template of the original mock-up gave me the whole position, but I still needed
Where's the signature go? So somebody when it's on Antiques Roadshow, yeah.
I'll go on right here where it's covered.
Oh.
Yeah, so once he's off, I'll just know.
Two more questions. That is a big piece of wood that looks pretty wide.
It's
I'm
the only
concerned,
thing to have.
well, I'm concerned it's gonna tip over because you've got a skinny base.
So what you can see, I mean, I think the most of anywhere in overhang is this, maybe 3. So I mean, what you're looking at, this top piece is of approximate shape of that.
Oh, you'll just have like a little hangover on the metal.
Or a little. Well, I mean, the wood. I mean, the closest is maybe an inch. Yeah, it's a good point, but I mean, you help me look at stuff. Most of those.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but what about, you were talking about the kind of the daylight in between wood and metal, you know, where you're,
Right here.
yeah, where you got a bunch of twists.
Yeah.
That one looks extreme, but I think that's because the plywood's used.
It is.
But like up here where you've got a little, what about just filling that, like, put a bead of weld on it and then grinding it down and fill that in?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was I was going to make custom holders at 3 points, you know, so potentially put up like a maybe piece of belt or 3 pins, fit into some plugs. Basically, make a foot and then a foot, so the whole thing is sitting. So it won't be as tippy. And if I make that 1/4 inch thick, you know, compensate it back. Okay, so basically, what Davey changed. This piece of metal is not bigger. And I couldn't get it straightened out after all of it. I probably could have put feet on it, but it's.
I know a guy who's got a lot of brass stock. I know other guys really straight brass stock.
Yeah.
Glass it up, make it feature.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I mean, part of the whole project is. Thing. I mean, we started with these big.
Or, you know, back to my comment though, you could even shave at the flat wheel off the rest of it and at least bring it closer to.
Yes, but then your eyes are gonna catch the paper. This isn't even an inch thick all the way around. And also remember, it's going on a wood floor. Or do you think it's flat?
Yeah, and I guess my point is that like, I don't see any big gaps, and so I'm thinking like, you know, 1/16 of an inch across the distance on the floor on top of a pretty thing, like, yeah, you'll see it and I'll see it, like, all your house guys will see it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the next move with this whole thing is, or as this whole process evolves, the next thing is I know I'm gonna well this come up and it's together.
Yeah, because it might create a natural freeze.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I mean, honestly, it's the same, that's frustrating products.
Well, we're really check in there.
Yeah, and that's actually. It's an interesting question of like, will the light underneath you buy some versus, I mean, so the other thought is I could buy some other, and then glue that to the bottom. And then theory it'll compress the parts there. That'd be a but that is probably very, well,
You can hide it, just big felt and take it, felt over all of that.
yeah, well, so we have a cat, and that's definitely got shot down by my wife as soon as they brought it up and said, well, it's gonna get dirty. And we have to treat it. Good point, so I don't know if felt, continuous felt is.
You can always use angles.
There
you go.
Yeah.
Plankton fill. I know, it's nice grass.
Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea, I mean, it would take fine.
Also, for in the back. I know.
Everybody's so helpful around here. It's always all right, anybody else got any questions for Sean? Anybody else? Just something to ask.
Have you seen what that looks like lighted? Like, I mean, it looks, it's amazing work. It's quite structural. Like, in other words, when it's in our shop at home, when the light shadows through it, it was cool. Like, because it creates a grass gutter. Oh, cool.
All right, anybody else on Zoom got anything they want to add? That's all. All right, thanks everybody for coming. This is thing you into it now here. All right.